and temperatures in the past.
For over a century, people all around the world have been collecting this data. This is real science. Painstaking work by thousands of forgotten volunteers. They probably never imagined just how important their work would be. Because when all the temperature data was put together, it told a striking story. Starting in 1910, according to the thermometers, the global temperature started to rise. Records were broken, and broken again. This warming phase lasted until the 1940s. Then the warming paused, only to start again in the 70s. This was the second warming phase of the 20th century, and according to the instruments, it was even more dramatic than the first.
It's been basking in the heatwave again. In many parts of the country, it's been hotter than Hong Kong or Honolulu.
Throughout the 80s and 90s, almost every year broke records.
The Met Office says the last 12 months have been the warmest since their records began in the 17th century.
Last year, the Earth recorded its highest average temperature since climate records began.
In total, the global temperature has increased by almost 1 degree Celsius in the last century. That may not sound like much, but to climatologists, this is a big deal.
The headlines were hard to ignore. Something was happening to our planet. It was almost as if we'd turned up the gas, and the Earth was beginning to cook.
But even with thousands of weather stations round the globe, there were still huge areas of the world with hardly any temperature data. For the sceptics, this made the thermometer records deeply suspect. Fortunately, a new technology had arrived on the scene. Satellites. These precision instruments were the space-age way to measure the true global temperature. They're really extraordinary pieces of technology.
You know, I use data from satellites all the time. I even teach a little bit about satellites, but I've never seen one. I've never been close to one. Right.
This is NASA's latest Earth observation satellite, due to be launched into space in 2010.
Here's the baby. Look at it, she's beautiful. Alright, there's a few things you have to know about this. First of all, this is pretty much how it goes up. Actually, some of the bits are coated over for protection, so they strip that off and they strip off some of the wire and it's just testing, but it pretty much goes up. There's no shields or anything like that. The other thing that's odd is it's actually upside down. That is space, and the roof is where the Earth would be. Now, in terms of the instruments, up here, behind this very fetching orange, is a visible camera, in the sense that it records the images just like the human eye does. In this one here, you've got infrared. Now this is the important one. This is what gives us temperature. This is a microwave sounding unit, which kind of acts like a microwave oven but in reverse. Instead of emitting microwaves, it receives and records microwaves. And depending on the amount of microwave radiation it receives, that gives us an idea about temperature.
With global coverage and high-tech instruments, satellites seemed like a much better way of measuring global temperatures than thermometers. And in the early 90s, scientists put together the satellite data. What they found rocked the entire global warming community. The satellites showed that the Earth wasn't warming. In fact, it was slightly cooling. One of the scientists who performed the calculations was Dr. Roy Spencer.
When we first did the satellite monitoring and got 10 years of data worth, it did show a slight cooling, which was a surprise to us.
This result was in stark contrast to what other scientists had been saying.
The rate of warming in the past 25 years is the highest on the record.
It was about this time that Jim Hansen was talking about, catastrophic global warming or potentially catastrophic global warming. And here we had the satellites telling us, well, it's been cooling for 10 years.
It was a huge victory for the skeptics. And it soon became a key piece of evidence against global warming, as this documentary from 1990 shows.
New data from space has made the land record more doubtful. Until recently, we've had no alternative but to rely on thermometers and weather balloons. But now, for the first time, satellites are giving us another source of information.
We've found that we can monitor globally averaged atmospheric temperatures with a high level of precision, even on a monthly basis.
Over the last 10 years, the thermometer record has shown an underlying upward trend. But according to the satellite information, the Earth was rather warmer in the first half of the 80s and rather cooler in the second half.
Wow. Well, that's a pretty striking difference. I mean, you could see why the climate skeptics were delighted when they got hold of the satellite data, because
you've got the red line showing the thermometer data and it's clearly going up. And then you've got the blue line showing the satellite data with no sign of warming at all.
Question is, which one of those is right? Is it the humble thermometer or is it the high-tech satellite? It's a classic scientific problem. You've got two different sets of data which are saying conflicting things. And the one thing that science tells us is that there's going to be a showdown, and only one set of data is going to be left standing.
First on the attack were the skeptics. They said there was one very obvious flaw in the data from the thermometers. They had ignored human progress.
Welcome to Las Vegas.
Las Vegas, like it or not, it's one of the 20th century's greatest achievements.
They don't do that in Glasgow. And this is where Britney get married for 55 hours.
This is the perfect place to test out a phenomenon which became central to the skeptics' case against the thermometer record.
Thing is, I'm not really here to have fun. I'm actually here to measure temperature, which according to this thermometer, even though it's late at night, is 22 degrees Celsius, which is pretty warm.
It's Vegas, baby.
So it's hot.
It's hot all the time.
But the significant thing is, drive out of the city and into the desert proper, and the temperature drops.
Well, now we're, I don't know where we are actually, it's the middle of nowhere, but we're outside the city limits, and I've got my thermometer, and it's reading, well, it's reading about 18 degrees C, so much cooler than it was in there. And the reason's simple. All that concrete, all those roads and cars, all the stuff that you get in modern cities, absorb the heat of the day, and then they release it at night. And those tall buildings, they trap the warm air that would otherwise blow away. It's the same story all over the world. Cities are heat traps.
It's called the urban heat island effect. And that effect, said the skeptics, had created the false impression